to ask all of you to put your questions forward or think of some questions around enterprise UX. Could be related directly to your own work, the projects you have going on. Maybe you're thinking about transitioning or stepping into this for the first time. Please stockpile those questions because we'll be getting to a point where we want to ask some of these. But we have a few that I wanted to run through, which are more generic, sort of general questions to start our discussion. And then I'm going to come and find you all. So I wanted to start with research and talk a little bit about some of the sort of best practices. I know you've all kind of talked about research in some ways today, but in an enterprise UX environment, to think about some of the best practices for conducting user research and testing in an enterprise context, where oftentimes there might be limited time and availability. How do we justify the need for research for enterprise UX systems when the business just wants them to do what they want them to do? So I don't know who wants to dive in on that.
Okay, if you already have...
They both looked straight at Karen.
Oh, right, okay. I didn't realise. If you already have the customer feedback, you have some, however you do that, whether it's like Google Reviews, Trustpilot, or some specific system for gathering feedback from your end users, that's a really good place to start as a way of convincing stakeholders that user research is important because, look, your average score is 2.5 out of 5 for this feature. It's like, and you've had this feature for a while now, maybe we need to do some sort of user research around that. And so that's a good place to start, I think. But also, I think a general theme has been with these talks is, or your two talks anyway, is this whole drip feeding, right? So if user research is not a thing, then you start small. So, if you are able to get hold of a couple of customers, have a couple of interviews, start with that. And then sort of explain, and then you show the results of that. Oh, look, I've just done this little bit of research, and now we've got some great results because of that. How about we invest a little bit more time into user research, and that might be using user research tools and things like that make it much easier to get that quick fire feedback. Because I think today, everyone wants to go at the speed of light, and they want to optimize the process to death. And you kind of need to also be as quick as possible with the research. And so by using tools like UserZoom or whatever, where you can do click tests, literally just a screenshot, and then send that out and say, where do you think you need to click for this feature or whatever? And then even that is better than nothing. And then as soon as you show the value with small little bits like that, then hopefully it gets them on board.
Another tip would be in enterprises, like, people don't love risks. So if you actually find a way to kind of explain what is the risk of going out there with an untested idea, that could be a way to actually maybe influence and convince stakeholders to actually do the research. And it actually doesn't require everyone to be involved, even though I love getting engineers to be involved in the user research, and I've done it so many times. It works amazingly well. But if you say that it's actually very cheap, it's only like me and maybe a few others, we can just do it very quickly and easily in a lightweight way. So it's like cheap and reduces the risk. Perfect.
I think one thing I'd say, especially in enterprise, is make sure you're communicating. So communicate how long it's going to take. So research does take time, but there's a quick way you could do it. How long it's going to take, but also what are the stakeholders and other people going to get out of the end of that? So what are they actually going to get? What are you hoping to learn? And also just take them along the journey. So it doesn't mean that they need to be involved in the testing, but actually if you say what you found at the end of a session or end of the 5 sessions that you spoke to, that could be really useful. I think the other thing is just make sure you have as much data as possible. So any way you could get data. So speak to customer services. Sales is always a good resource as well, because they're always talking to customers. So try and get as much data as you can, and that again will help you prioritize, but also give that scale of the findings that you have as well.
Love that. Thank you, all of you. So I want to look at some of the war scars that you have and understand from your personal experiences how you've challenged these. So like, you probably all had some experience obviously working in enterprise UX. how do you balance robust functionality with the need for clean, intuitive user experiences for these enterprise applications? When you've been, because a lot of the time it tends to be like, we just need to get the job done. So how have you tackled that in your own, unique experiences?
Well, often you're sort of, on a, you may not have as many designers as you may want in your team, right? But there's lots of products to try and do this design for and try and get to that level of refinement that you're referring to. And I think it's about picking your battles, basically. And I know that's really not a particularly advanced answer, but what I mean by that is, so let's say you have a mixture of internal tools and tools that your customers actually buy, then the tools that customers are actually paying for, that's where you focus your efforts. I think obviously showing competitors as well. I think one of the most difficult positions to be in the situation you were describing, is when your company is the only company or the only notable company that does what it does, because then it's like, well, what's our incentive? We have no competition. Why bother making this look any good? Because we're the only people that do it. But if there are competitors of any sort, then by showing that they are doing it, and if you're able to get hold of any other data or research that backs up that these competitors they might look small now, but look how they're gradually catching up, and hopefully that will convince them to sort of invest a bit more time in more of the elegant refining of an interface and not just the robust functionality.
Yeah, I think to add to that, what I would say is, lost my train of thought, sorry, what was the question again? Sorry.
About robust functionality versus kind of
Yes.
clean, intuitive.
Yeah, so I think there's two things. One, this is where the design system probably comes into play. So using design patterns and making sure that you can say, like, actually it's quite efficient. If we start using established design patterns and using them over a period of time, it's going to save engineers a whole load of time. I think also, like Gareth said, it's using things that other companies have done and said, actually, this company does it. We know that our actual users use this kind of design pattern, this thing. We should be doing it as well because it's something that people are used to. And I think the other side of it is that you're always going to end up having new users. So there's an element of time saving or time completion, so saving time within that task completion that you can demonstrate. So if you can almost do a test with users and see actually how quickly they can complete a task, that's usability. That's going to be good aesthetics to a certain extent, reduction of clicks, all of that kind of stuff. So it's almost trying to turn the aesthetics into a data point and like science it.
I just thought of something, and I don't want to forget it. So, you know that UI that I was showing earlier, that it was called Vouched, and I was like, right. So I have actually already revamped it. I've already basically completely overhauled the visual design to make it look much better. And I've also, while I was doing that, I was also sort of speaking to, Vouch people as well to make them feel like, they've also, contributed to it as well. So you have that sort of, really inspiration, a bit arrogant of me to say, but it is something to aspire to, basically, as in, this is what your software could look like, and you've helped me get there. And then anything less than that might be a little bit disappointing, as like, oh, it could be that good, but...
Set the vision.
Yes, yeah.
Like that.
I actually want to add to the point that using a component library that is already very established and nice looking, and customizing that in a way that you can actually quickly build something very beautiful is a really quick win. And again, speed, cost, and if the decision makers know that it's not gonna take a lot of time to actually build something clean and nice, yeah, that would be a way to go. So I am working in cybersecurity, and because of the confidentiality, I can't explain too much about what I'm doing, but Some of the users came to me and asked how can they buy the license for this product. It's an internal solution. They don't need to buy it. But like hearing that is a win, really. So yeah, that's why like build something that customers would want to pay for and maybe thought that they need to pay.
I appreciate that. And to take this in a slightly different direction, when you've so you've done everything you can to kind of design a great system. Have you got any strategies that you might employ or have experience employing to tackle resistance to updates in the internal systems and helping drive that user engagement and use of the product? Because at the end of the day, businesses need their employees to use these tools.
Yeah, I think there's two aspects. One, it's an internal system, and the end user has to use it anyway. So some people don't actually normally care because they have to use it anyway, so it doesn't matter. And then I think the other side is you get stakeholders who already know the solution. So they're like, we already know what the solution is, we just need you to do some visuals, and we just need you to design it. And then what we kind of need to do as a design team, and what I've done previously, is almost challenge that a little bit, but doing that slowly. So really trying to understand the stakeholders, what their needs are, also what makes them tick as well. So if you've got a stakeholder that's all about the numbers, really start talking to them about numbers and data and all of these kind of things. A lot of the time, especially in internal systems, it's about efficiency, time saving, task completion. So how can you start talking about that? Like how we've reduced clicks, and this equals X amount in time saving, but also X amount in money. So again, like trying to change some of these things that we already know, but trying to change it so it speaks the language of your stakeholders. And I think that's what the key thing is.
I think that's good advice for anyone, whether you're an enterprise UX or anywhere. Like speak the ROI and communicate that value like that. And anyone else to add on that point?
I absolutely agree to that point. And one other strategy could be a bit of like one step ahead. I also in my talk actually talked a lot about what is happening today and how can we understand the current climate. But if we are one step ahead and knowing what is coming next, sometimes the business actually know that things might change and it is not visible to the product teams. So if we can be one step ahead and then work with the solution that doesn't exist yet in a new workflow, that would be also a way to go instead of trying to change what is existing, but maybe others know that isn't going to be irrelevant very soon.
Amazing.
I think these two covered it quite well.
Amazing. No, that's great. I want to leave time for the audience, so that's great, Gareth. So my last question, before I hand over to the audience, comes down to accessibility and inclusivity. I mean, it's a very important question. This is a tool that is mandated to be used, right? It's not like a choice. There isn't a different option. How do you approach that? How do you approach accessibility and inclusive design when you are creating internal systems or enterprise UX systems?
It's actually a good question. So when I was working at Kazoo, our users were internal users, and they were drivers, and they happened to be drivers of a certain age, so a more mature age, and they actually were outside in the field. So they were using tablets, they were outside in the field, they had to be able to use our software in different lighting conditions, rain, wind, all of these kind of things. So we had to actually consider that. And where you actually fall into is accessibility guidelines, high contrast, simple interfaces. So a lot of times when you're talking about functionality and usability, like Gareth said earlier, it leans into that accessibility space because it needs to be really intuitive and easy to use, so that the user could just get on with their task. So I think that's the way I've tackled it previously. But again, it's understanding the user and the context that the user's in, I think.
Yeah, I would say, it's such a good point, accessibility, because, like I was talking about usability being second to, utility. I mean, accessibility in a lot of sort of enterprises, it's like, good luck with that. Because, it's often overlooked. And it is a real challenge to get people to take it seriously. And I guess my advice would be just to keep talking about it, keep referring to it, keep referring to the fact that WCAG have released some new guidelines, and also keep reminding the people you're working with that when you design something accessible, that makes it better for everybody, right? So you want, so in my case, letting agents to work as efficiently as possible. They are only going to do that if they can read the buttons properly and read the text. You've got to make sure those contrast ratios are good, both on the text, both on the icons. And yeah, just keep hammering it. And also, when you are putting new design systems together, just make sure those components, each of them are accessible, and as they get implemented, and then hopefully over time it will transition to something that is fairly decent accessibility-wise.
Absolutely. And in internal solutions, there is always this big assumption that we already know the system that they are working on, right? Especially in highly regulated environments, you are only allowed to use that certain operating system and certain screens that are already provided. It's very easy to assume that that is the screen size. But when I do again, like this, the beauty of the qualitative research is that you can actually see how people are using it, like extremely zoomed in. And then there was one user that had actually like a physical calculator because they said they can't see the numbers. They had to use the calculator and things like that. Again, like removing the assumptions that we all know everything about the users because we know their setup. I tried to get this actually answer from one of the companies that I worked for, and then it went to the HR directly and said, do you know how many people have accessibility requirements? They said, oh, no one needs it. How do you know? Did you ask? They don't have that data, so we can't really rely on what we think we know. Another one is, I think, to add to that is the inclusivity. In a fintech, KYC, like know your customer, a process that I worked for, which you need a lot of information that actually to validate if the person is the person they said who they are, which is like very close to what you are doing. And then there was this he and she question. And I strongly believe in inclusivity, and I set up a meeting every day at the same time to the manager until I convinced them to remove that question. Mm-hmm. And then you know what? We didn't actually need that question to validate if the person is who they said they are.
Yeah, the standard formatting of forms, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Amazing. Really appreciate your answers. And now I'm going to throw it out to everyone to ask some questions. We've got one down here. Can I have any other hands? One up here, one down. Okay, we've got plenty. All right, awesome. Let's start here.
Hi, I'm going to stand up because I can't see. So I work at a B2B company right now, and for some reasons, our research is very minimum. I only do like twice a year, probably. So all I'm relying on is the data, sales, from partner success, stakeholders. So I'm getting my data from them, so there are always middlemen. And if we had a research team, I would have understood research team send the reports to us, so I see how they do the methodology. I can understand what kind of bias coming from the data, but the other teams, the sales team, customer experience team, I don't know how they actually work, and they don't give me a report of because they don't do research. I ask them something and they answer me. So when I receive this data, what kind of considerations should I make from what they tell me? Because I don't know how they actually work.
That's a tough one. That's a tough one. So the data.
Zero qual.
Yeah. So the data you're receiving is just really biased from the sales team. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know if it's biased. I ask them how do users do this, and they just answer me, and then I don't know what do they actually do to.
Oh, are they guessing, or do you not know?
They probably some teams they go to the visit to talk to the users. Some of them receive some complaints. So they receive something. It's completely data, real data. But I don't know how they actually work and what kind of bias would be. I don't understand. And they don't report me something. It's always, I don't know how you work, but it's usually I ask something and they give me an answer.
So they have access to users?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. You need to make friends with them and go with them, or join them on the calls.
So observe
Yes,
how
yeah,
they work.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Make that a norm. I think actually a massive thing to realize with enterprise is many companies have never done any user research before. So when a UX person comes in, whether it's a designer or dedicated researcher, whatever, it is the first time they've heard of that position, and they won't bother to learn what it is and what it's about. So you need to tell them that this is your job, this is normal, however you want to communicate that, and then explain what you're trying to achieve, and then say, hey, when you're going with users, can I come too? And make sure you do this in a very friendly, not in a condescending way or, aggressive way in any sort, basically. Be very friendly and say, oh, hey, this is what I want to achieve. Can I come along? Oh, yeah, fine. Yeah. And say, look, I won't do anything. I just want to shadow. So start with shadowing and then build up from there. I think that would be my advice. The fact you've got access to users in some capacity is already a good start.
Yeah. And maybe having like focused research projects will help as well, because then you will be the one driving those questions and planning, and then getting them actually help you, and then you will be part of the planning. At least you will know what type of questions they will ask, and then to eliminate the bias.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Cupcakes for everyone.
Yeah.
Awesome. We had lots of hands. I'm going to go straight here. We probably won't get to everyone, just being...
Hi, I'm Stevie. I work at LexisNexis on the AI thing, so kind of a bigger scale of DD, like bigger clients. But I had a question that's kind of like, it's less of a question, but mine kind of more opening up to the floor. Gareth, you said something about on the M&S page, you had the marketing on the right-hand side.
Mm-hmm.
And Ezra, you said something about how when you, in enterprise, if you release something very quickly and then it just kind of becomes somebody's kind of pattern. My question is kind of around releasing, like education that you were talking about, releasing new functionality or something, anything like that, using, say, marketing the way that John Lewis did. Like, hey, this is a new feature, have you tried this? You referenced saying, ask your user, like, why this isn't working, why they aren't using it. Like, a lot of the times that we have found in some features, most of the times people weren't using the feature was just because they just didn't know about it. So I just kind of was less of a question, but what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think it's quite an interesting one, especially because it's like, I think one of the issues that we have at Dye & Durham is how do you actually cross-sell other features? Or there's all this capability in our systems, but our users are just using this one thing. And I think it's an interesting challenge. What I've started doing is looking at other examples. So Teams is quite good, actually. So I don't know if you've got like a prompt from Teams where it kind of basically talks about another feature. Trello also does this as well. So I've got the free version of Trello, and it's a bit of a dark pattern, but essentially you click on something and they kind of have a pop out of essentially what that feature is about, and you have to pay for it. So really looking at those other kind of patterns of how you cross-sell and help discover features. I think this is where AI can actually help as well, like really understanding and really understanding what a user's doing and trying to be like, well, actually, you could be a bit more efficient if you use this tool that we have, or if you started doing it in this way. So I think that's basically where I'm thinking. Don't steal my idea. But this is kind of what I'm thinking about, that cross-sell bit. So less about these ads that kind of, when you see an ad, you're like, oh no, close it down, you want to get on with what you're doing. But actually, how can we cross-sell other features in a really smart way that is helpful to the user? So we're trying to help to the user, not sell to the user. Yeah.
Whereas the user is using, they won't use it because they don't know about it, but then they don't know about it because it can't function. And then because the customer sees that no users are using it, they won't buy that as an optional extra.
Yeah.
So you can't upsell it later.
Yeah.
So it's like kind of like B2C versus B2B thing, like where the user doesn't buy, but through attrition and not using, they're kind of buying by usage.
Yeah.
I don't know if I clarified the question.
No.
identifying power users might help, because in B2B products, there are a lot of power users that actually know the product in and out, and they have lots of idea, and they probably know better than you how to build everything. So identifying those, I'm not saying that only focus on them, because they can actually create a lot of bias and they want to kind of sometimes manipulate as well. But identifying those, because that will create an organic marketing. Because especially in B2B and internal solutions, people really tell each other ways to do things, because there is a lot of, everything is a workaround. And if your product is solving one of those, they will actually start talking to other people for like organic marketing. But I believe that B2B could borrow a lot of good practices from B2C. For example, right now I'm really fighting for user docs. Why shouldn't we have user docs? We are spending hours every day answering people's questions. We could have user docs. Just because we are easily available from chat doesn't mean that we shouldn't build it. So there is again like cost-saving thing, but I strongly believe in the organic marketing and identifying those power users to be your kind of like advocates.
Thank you. I'm really sorry to all the people who have questions. We are currently hitting the 9 o'clock mark. So I'm just going to ask our speakers to leave us a little, your own opinion on why people should consider moving into enterprise UX over regular B2C. And we're going to do this in like 30 seconds a person. So it's like your pitch to people to join enterprise UX. Go.
Okay, I'm going to start talking. Right. So impact, I would say. I think because of how glamorous B2C has been over the years, and B2B has sort of been in the shadows a little bit, I think now it's flipping, and I think now impact can be shown in enterprise. That's the new area to really show how UX, UI, product design, whatever you want to call it, can really make those numbers go up or down, depending on what you're trying to do. So yeah, a lot more problem solving, a lot more interesting than moving buttons around. Okay, go.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm joking. Over to you, Vanessa.
Complexity. If you like complexity, and a lot of these companies are probably really old school, they do things in a really old kind of way. If you like bringing innovative ideas, simple ideas, and that element of solving complex things, then enterprise is the place for you. I think the other thing as well, compared to B2C, is you're solving bigger problems as well. So often you've got smaller design teams, you're solving those bigger, chunkier, meatier problems. So if you just don't want to work on just one really small feature, or you find that you go up so far and then you're a little bit frustrated because you've got to hand it over to another designer and another team, then you want to work in enterprise because you actually get to do the end-to-end.
Amazing. Ezra,
I
take us on.
already agree for both of the statements. And just to add on those, if you actually like people management, like people relationship building, and try to understand the dynamics and politics, and really work with people, then enterprise and B2B is a good place to work. And also there are a lot of advantages, like knowing the setup, even though I said like quite the opposite. But at least you can actually access to your users a lot easier than you would maybe in the B2C environment. So there are a lot of advantages, and it actually help you grow a lot quicker in different ways.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Please put one warm round of applause to all our speakers. Thank you so much for coming out today.